Linda was cooking dinner, humming a tune from the operetta she and her husband watched last night. Suddenly, the front door slammed. Linda was taking the meat out of the oven. She had decided to go to the grocery store after work, where she had successfully bought fresh meat. Humming cheerfully, the woman was waiting for her spouse from work to delight him with a delicious meal. "Jamie, look what a delicious meal we have for dinner. Wash your hands, call Nellie, and let's have dinner." The spouse looked at Linda strangely and sat down at the table. He was clearly upset about something. "Jamie, is something wrong?" Linda asked cautiously. "Everything's fine," he answered with a sigh. "Maybe you don't feel well?" "No, I'm okay. Let's just finally have dinner." "Daddy!" Their 5-year-old daughter, Nellie, ran out of the room. "Why didn't you come in to see me, Daddy?" Linda quickly took the girl to the table and asked her to be quiet, saying that Daddy had a headache. Jamie listened absent-mindedly to his daughter's chatter, nodding to his wife. After he finished his meal, he thanked his wife and left to smoke on the balcony. Linda gave no sign that his behavior was offensive. The woman silently cleared the table, looked out on the balcony, and saw her husband sitting there, smoking and looking at one point. Linda had never heard a bad word from her husband. He had never once offended her. But on the third day of living like this, after running through all the possible reasons, she decided that Jamie had probably found another woman and just didn't know how to tell her about it. Linda thought it was the end of their life together. They would get a divorce. The woman cried for a long time, but then she pulled herself together and forced her husband to tell it like it really was. Jamie was quiet for a while. Then he told Linda that the things he was about to tell her would not make her happy. They would probably have to get a divorce. "I don't want to live apart from you and Nellie. I love you. I love both you and our daughter. But there can be no other solution. I have to pay for everything." "What on earth are you talking about? Is someone chasing you away? Why would you leave? We're so happy together." "After you know everything, I don't think we'll be together. But I can't do it any other way. I'm sorry, darling."
"Oh my goodness. What happened?" "Apparently I was right," Linda thought sorrowfully. "He cheated on me and his mistress got pregnant."
Linda burst into tears. "Don't cry, Linda. Just listen to me, and then you can judge me."
"I hate you, you bastard. Did you think of us? Did you think of me? Of Nellie? Why are all men such assholes? Do you realize that you've ruined not only my life, but your daughter's life as well?"
"Linda, listen to me, I beg you. You and I didn't even know each other then, and Nellie hadn't been born. Hear me out, please." "I used to go on vacations to my grandparents, to a remote village. It's in the middle of nowhere, but the nature there is so beautiful. Pine forests on one side, and mountains in a blue haze of clouds on the other. There's also a river there. The water was very cold, but we went swimming anyway. There are beautiful meadows, pleasant herbal smells, and a lot of berries in the forest. Can you imagine, Linda? Sometimes the bears would come out of the forest and watch us, and then turn around and leave without hurting us. But we were not allowed to go deep into the woods. There were meadows full of herbs along the forest, fragrant clover, grass, chamomile, bittercress, wild onion, acacia, and even here's cabbage. There were so many varieties of herbs and flowers. There was asparagus, raspberries, and black currant bushes, and the forest was full of mushrooms. I spent my childhood in such beauty. Every summer I wanted to go to my grandparents. Can you imagine what it's like for us, urban boys and girls, to find ourselves in such a quiet and comfortable place? It was like being in a fairy tale. I had 2 friends in the village. We would have loved to stay there forever. There were no other children in the village except for us. All the young people also left for the city. Only seniors lived in the village permanently. All the kids and teenagers mostly came only for the summer. One day, when we were picking raspberries, I noticed a girl I didn't know. She had beautiful, honey-colored big eyes, long blonde hair, white teeth, and a shy smile. The girl seemed to be lost in time. Famous artists painted such girls on their canvases. She was very different. She smiled quietly and listened to us chatting. When she saw me staring at her, that girl was embarrassed and lowered her gaze. I was about 14. I couldn't stop thinking about her, and so I tried to find out something about her, but nobody saw her. Everyone was minding their own business. The next day I met her again, but no one else noticed her. Then I purposely went to the place where she was picking raspberries. She didn't talk, just smiled silently and sweetly all the time. One day, no one went to pick raspberries because it was out of season, so I went alone. No one was around. Suddenly I heard someone running right out of the woods. I thought it was a bear, but I decided to pull the bushes apart quietly, and I saw some old woman. She was dressed in black, but then she took off her headscarf and her clothes too, and I saw socks, sandals, long blonde hair. It was the same girl. I felt as if I were neither alive nor dead. "Who's there?" she asked softly. I was quiet. She asked again. "Is that you?" "Me," I answered, and I didn't know if she was expecting to see me or someone else. "Okay," the girl said. "I heard your name was Jamie." "Yes," I rejoiced. "My name is Jamie." "And my name is Nellie." So we sat and talked, me on one side of the bush and her on the other. Nellie was the same age as me, but she was very different. She didn't know the simplest things, and she listened avidly to everything I said. And when she found out that I was coming here by plane, she was so shocked. It turned out she had never seen a plane before. "I know what a plane is. I'm not stupid. I'm sorry, I have to go." "Wait, Nellie, are you offended or something? Wait!" But the girl began pulling on her clothes, sobbing softly. "Wait, Nellie, can I walk you home?" "No," the girl cried out quickly. "No, I'll go alone. You can't come with me." "Nellie, will you come here again?" "I'll try, but now go away, or there will be trouble." "Who's going to be in trouble? Me? I'm not afraid," I said mockingly. "Me, I'm afraid." And the girl disappeared into the thicket. All day long, I wondered who Nellie was and where she came from. I even began to believe in all of the fairy tales my grandmother had told me when I was a kid. Could she be a mermaid or a forest girl? Or maybe she was the granddaughter of a forest sprite. By evening, I couldn't stand it and asked my grandmother if there were any villages nearby. "My dear, you know there are no settlements near our village. We're in the middle of nowhere." "Not really," Grandpa had said. "There's a hermit village. People live there, too." "Oh, they live in complete isolation behind a high fence and never come out." And Grandma shook her shoulders. "Who?" I didn't understand. "Those hermits." I had learned about hermits in school, but I had no idea they still existed. I thought it was long ago, not even in our era. Now there's space, airplanes, teleportation is about to be invented, and yet there's still hermits. No way, that's ridiculous. I cautiously started asking my friends, and it turned out that everyone had heard of that mysterious settlement. Nellie did not show up, and I missed her. One day, as I was sitting on the roof of the house looking out at the blue peaks of the mountains, dreaming about something, someone called out to me. It was Nellie standing near my house. She was looking up at me,
I rolled off that roof and nearly hurt myself, but 30 seconds later, I was standing in front of the girl. From that day on, my life changed forever. Nellie would tell her grandparents that she was going into the woods, and then she would come to me. We'd quickly get the right amount of what Nellie had come for, mushrooms, berries, or herbs, and then we'd just go into the meadow, lie down on the grass, and talk. Basically, I talked, and she listened, rarely asking questions. I told her about the world I lived in, about discoveries, space, the ocean, islands, the world revolution, the war, school, universities, the army, factories and plants and movies. I told her about everything. We were like from two different worlds, but in fact, that's how it was. The adults might have known something about the world outside the walls, but the children knew nothing. They were afraid to take a step beyond their isolated village. But Nellie was very inquisitive and brave. Now I realize that it's not measured as bad or good, it's just that people live differently now. And back then, Nellie, how did you even get here? I found your village a long time ago. At first, I watched you from afar, then I started to come closer. And then I met a girl. She gave me a dress, sandals, and socks. I changed my clothes and come out to you. Everyone thinks I'm from around here. I keep quiet, listen to your conversations. It was time to part ways. I had to go home. Obviously, I didn't want to leave. Nellie was crying. How about I write you letters? I'll send letters to my grandparents' address and you'll pick them up once a month? No, Jamie. I can only come here in summer. How am I supposed to get here in the winter? No, let's wait until next summer. You know what? Write me letters and then bring them to me. I'll hide them and read them next winter. And that's what we did. I wrote a letter every day, describing everything. School, the way to and from school, the lessons, the breaks, the weather outside. I was looking forward to summer very much. My parents offered to go to the sea abroad, but I flatly refused. I needed to go to the village. The summer flew by unnoticed. Winter came again. Then another summer, and we met again. I brought her simple gifts, a mirror, a notebook, pens, hairpins, and handkerchiefs. I thought I was very romantic. But we were tracked down by her brother, Adam. He was 2 years older. He and I had a terrible fight, and Nellie was crying and shaking at the time. She persuaded him not to tell anything to her grandparents. He made me promise not to hurt Nellie, and I wasn't going to hurt her. Linda, don't get me wrong. I was a teenager, a bit romantic, a bit detached from reality. After all, as a child, I read so many books about brave knights and beautiful princesses. One day, when we were 18, I talked her into running away. She trusted me. My parents were shocked, but warmly welcomed Nellie. A year later, we went to her grandparents. She refused to get married without their blessing. I won't bore you with the stories of how I managed to beg their forgiveness for both of us, but we got their blessing. We lived with my parents. We lived there for 2 years. I entered university, and things were different with Nellie. She was afraid of everything. It would seem that she was so brave, inquisitive, and not afraid to break the laws of her settlement. But no. She absolutely refused to study. She didn't like going to the movies. She didn't want to read any books and wasn't interested in fashion. She didn't share my hobbies, but she wasn't interested in anything herself. She spent every day locked in our room until the evening. Only in the evening when I came home would Nellie come to life. At the same time, she kept the apartment clean and cooked well, but as soon as my parents came home, Nellie would run away to the room and stay alone, timid and silent. My mother praised the girl very much, and my father praised her delicious food and everything else. But all was in vain. Nellie could burst into tears every time someone asked her questions directly. Eventually, my parents stopped trying. My cousin managed to make friends with Nellie. but she had her own life and couldn't come over often. We really were from different worlds. Our relationship became more and more complicated. I often caught her praying. She could pray and worship all night long, often crying. Gradually, we became drifting apart from each other. "We warned you," my father told me frowningly one day. "You took responsibility for her, so be a man." I wasn't going to hurt her. I just wanted to live. Go out with my woman, introduce her to my friends, go hiking, sit by the fire, cover her with my jacket, make plans and kiss her endlessly until my lips hurt. After all, I had none of that. I wasn't complaining, and I didn't want any other woman. I wanted to go through it all with Nellie. But she didn't want the same. When my friends fell in love, broke up, made up, and fought, did crazy things, made far-reaching plans, and looked forward with glowing eyes, I had none of that. I had Nellie. I wanted to live. But Nellie, on the contrary, it was as if she was preparing to die every day. When I asked her to go to the sea or to go camping, she only cried. One day, she begged to go to our village, and we went. I knew she missed her native lands and wanted to see her relatives. She said she would go to see her family, and never came back. Adam came to me and asked to leave Nellie alone. She said she didn't want to live with me anymore. I didn't listen to him. I went to their settlement. I knocked on the gate. I shouted. Nellie came out to say goodbye to me. She told me to leave and that I was free now. She said that such a life was not good for her. "There's so much sin around," Nellie said with her head down. "I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm not ready. I can't live like this. Your parents are very nice, and you're a great guy, too. But you're different. I do not feel good there, and I'm scared. Jamie, let me go and forget me." That's how the story ended. It was the story of my first love. I tried to forget everything that happened to me, and so did my parents. Don't judge me. I feel like I was just a young fool who decided to take on an unbearable burden. My grandparents died, and I've never been to that wonderful place ever again. I'd forgotten, or rather, tried to forget it all. Linda, don't get me wrong. I have no feelings for Nellie. I love you, and I love our daughter. I wish you would give us a son, too. Remember that you chose the name of our daughter yourself. I would never have dared to take that step. But the past caught up with me. I didn't hide from you that I was married, right? Right, Linda said quietly. I didn't lie to you when I told you I had no children except for Nellie. I didn't know, Linda. They informed me the other day that Nellie passed away. I swear that all these years I didn't even think of her, but Linda, it turns out that I have a son. His name is Marcus. I don't know why she hid it from me at the time. I understand you don't want this child, but I can't abandon him. I'm sorry. Linda was silent for a long time, and then she asked, childishly, if Jamie loved her. Why are you even asking me that? Of course I love you. You say you love me, but without talking to me, without explaining the situation, you've already decided everything for me. Linda, I'm not a little boy. I understand that you don't want my ex's child, already a teenager, who grew up in a completely different environment. What makes you think they'll give him up to you? How old is he? 13? 14? He's 13. Nellie's brother Adam found me. Don't you think the same thing could happen to your son as it did to his mother? She couldn't live here. What if the boy can't either? I've thought about that already, Linda, but I can't abandon this boy. Linda and Jamie had a very long and difficult conversation. Late that night, a frightened Nellie came into the kitchen. Mom, can I have some food? I'll eat and then you'll fight again. Daddy, do you want to leave us?
Oh, my goodness, sweetheart. Come here. We're going to eat now. I will never leave you. It just so happens that you're about to have a brother.
Really? The girl froze in excitement. Like my friends? Will you let me roll the stroller?
No, Nellie. It just so happens that your brother is older than you. He's bigger and older.
Wow. Is that possible?
It happens, daughter. It happens. They were all so worried. Jamie's mom took a whole bottle of sedative, and Dad was pacing from corner to corner. Nellie wouldn't get off the windowsill, and only Linda looked calm. She controlled her emotions, but everything inside her was burning. She asked herself many times if she was doing the right thing. Marcus charmed everyone.
He looks a lot like Jamie, her mother-in-law said with a quiet sigh. He's just like my son. Wow. They also look alike with Nellie. Their eyes. Linda imagined a sullen big teenager with an old-fashioned haircut, wearing an overcoat and knee-high boots. But he turned out to be a handsome boy with big amber eyes and dimples on his cheeks, just like Jamie and Nellie. The boy smiled shyly and held out his hand. An hour later, he was sitting with Nellie on his lap, and she was telling him about the funny situations that happened in kindergarten. No one expected it to be so easy. Everyone prepared for the difficulties. Linda prepared for the worst, remembering her husband's stories. Jamie and his parents remembered past experiences. But things were different. The boy was like he was from the next neighborhood. Marcus, Linda once asked, I believe you're not familiar with everything you see here, are you? No, on the contrary, I've been to the big city many times. Now we are allowed to leave the settlement. It's just that we live apart from everybody else. We stick to the rules and so on. Now our settlement is not what it used to be. Besides, Mom taught me everything. It's like she knew I'd have to go away. The boy got sad. Do you miss your mom? Yeah, but I know I can't get her back. She told me that when Dad finds out, he'll take me away. At first, it was hard for the boy in school, but thanks to his teachers, he coped with his difficulties. He learned new information quickly, even though he came to school with almost no knowledge. After a while, he even became an A student. Linda was very worried about whether she could accept Marcus and whether she could be friends with him. But 6 months later, she couldn't imagine her life without him. Jamie was happy about it. One day, Linda found him on the balcony, smoking and staring at the wall. Jamie, I know that look. Tell me what happened right now. Another ex-wife? Children? Grandchildren? Come on, Linda. My friend is selling his country house. Maybe we should buy it. We can take the kids out into the countryside, relax from this urban noise, and enjoy the fresh air. There's nothing to think about, Linda hugged her husband. We should buy that house. Mommy, I finally got an A in chemistry, Marcus shouted. He rushed out to meet Linda, who had come home from work. Nellie ran after him, shouting that Marcus had finally gotten an A in that damn chemistry. Marcus was picking Nellie up from daycare on his way home from school. He didn't pick her up in the evening, but right after lunch. But the girl was insanely happy. All the children looked at them enviously. After all, Nellie had such a handsome, kind, and cheerful brother. Soon they would be going to school together, too. Mom! Mommy! The children jumped, and Linda sat down on the chair in the hallway. Tears of happiness and joy flowed from her eyes. Mom! The boy called her Mom. All fears were left behind. Now they will only go forward, only to good things. Marcus quickly got used to everything. Everyone loved the boy when they heard the whole story. Even Linda's parents accepted the boy as their grandson. There are never enough grandchildren, Linda's dad said, and her mom smiled quietly and set the table to feed her new grandson something delicious. I wish we had a house here, Linda said enthusiastically. It's far away from the city, but it'd be nice to come here on vacation. It's so beautiful. The houses had long been empty. No one lived in Jamie's childhood village anymore. All that remained there were memories. Only some of the children and grandchildren of the deceased pensioners came for the summer, keeping some order in the little village. Jamie and Linda opened the house. Inside the house, everything was the same as it had been those years ago. It seemed as if Grandpa and Grandma went somewhere and would be back soon. In the evening, the children came home. Linda was still afraid to let them go there, but the children bravely went to the hermit settlement. Nellie had a toy in her hand, a whistle. Uncle Adam gave it to me. It turns out that Marcus and I have an uncle. Did you know we have an uncle? He lives over there, the girl pointed somewhere beyond the woods. And what are you wearing, princess? Uncle Adam's wife gave me this dress, and she braided my hair. Now I don't feel too hot. Oh, I see. The years have passed, and the children are long grown. Jamie and Linda are already babysitting their grandchildren. They have long forgotten that Marcus lived somewhere else. Sister and brother were very friendly. Jamie, Linda asked one day, would you really leave then? Yes, Linda. I can't abandon my son. But then you would abandon your daughter, Jamie. What makes you think that, Linda? I would have left you, not my daughter. If you had told me that you didn't need Marcus, I would have left. Linda decided she shouldn't tempt fate anymore and ask stupid questions. I didn't expect anything from you, Linda. I knew what a shock it was to suddenly have a child in our lives. Moreover, he was already a teenager. I was afraid. But I'm sorry. I couldn't do it any other way. Come on, Jamie. Let's just forget it all. It's a good thing it happened that way.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself. This could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.